Two rivers can look almost identical, same water, same gravel, same flow. But one may contain gemstones, and the other will never produce a single crystal. The difference is not obvious. It doesn't stand out in color or movement. It's not something you notice in a quick glance, but it exists, and it controls everything. Most people approach rivers with the wrong assumption. They believe gemstones depend on what they can see in front of them, so they choose locations that look promising. Clean water feels right. Rounded stones look worked. Wide gravel bars seem productive. But none of those factors actually determine whether gemstones exist, because rivers do not create gemstones. They only move what already exists. This is the first critical shift. If a river contains gemstones, the explanation is not in the river itself. It is upstream. Always upstream. Every river is part of a much larger geological system. Water moves downhill, but it does not move alone. It carries fragments of everything it touches. As it cuts through hills, mountains, and valleys, it breaks down rock. It lifts particles. It transports minerals. And over time, it redistributes pieces of the Earth's geological history. So the real question is not about the river. It's about the journey. What rocks does the river pass through? What environments shape those rocks? What conditions existed long before the river even formed? Because if those conditions never supported gemstone formation, then no amount of searching will change the outcome. This is why two rivers can behave in completely different ways. One river may flow across ordinary sedimentary terrain. Rocks like sandstone, shale, or limestone dominate these environments. These rocks form from deposited sediments, compressed over time. They rarely experience the heat, pressure, or chemical activity required to form crystals. So even if the river looks perfect on the surface, it carries nothing of value. Another river may cut through a very different environment, zones where the Earth has been active. These are environments where crystals can form, where minerals reorganize, where elements concentrate, where gemstones become possible. To understand this, you need to understand how gemstones form, not all at once, not randomly, but under very specific conditions. Take hydrothermal systems. These form when hot, mineral-rich fluids move through fractures in rock. As these fluids cool, minerals begin to crystallize. Pegmatites are known for producing large crystals. Tourmaline, Beryl, Topaz. These are not random occurrences. They are the result of very specific chemical environments. There are also metamorphic environments. These form when existing rocks are subjected to intense heat and pressure. The original structure changes. New minerals form. In these environments, you often find minerals like garnet, sometimes even sapphire or ruby, depending on the chemistry. Each of these systems leaves a geological signature, and rivers that pass through these systems inherit those signatures. But even this is not enough, because carrying gemstones is only one part of the equation. The second part is just as important: retention. Water does not simply transport material, it sorts it, constantly. As water flows, it separates materials based on size, shape, and density. Light materials move easily. Sand, silt, organic matter, they stay in motion. Heavier materials behave differently. They resist movement. They settle when energy drops. This is the principle behind natural concentration, and it is why some parts of a river contain valuable material, while others contain nothing at all. For a river to hold gemstones, two conditions must be met. First, the source must exist upstream. Second, the river must create conditions that allow those materials to settle. If either condition fails, the result's the same: no gemstones. This explains a mistake many people make. They choose rivers based on appearance: clear water, accessible banks, nice gravel. But those features are not geological indicators. They are visual preferences. The real question is not, what does this river look like? It is, what has this river touched? This is where geological awareness becomes essential, because the landscape around the river tells the story. Look beyond the water. Observe the surrounding rock. Is it layered and uniform, or fractured and irregular? Layered rocks often indicate sedimentary environments. These are less likely to produce gemstones. Fractured rocks suggest stress, movement, and geological activity. These are more promising. Look for veins, lines cutting through rock, often lighter in color. These can indicate mineral-rich fluids moving through fractures. Quartz veins are one of the most common examples. Also observe color changes. Red or rusty zones may indicate oxidation. This can be associated with mineral deposits. Dark green or black rocks may indicate ultramafic compositions. These can be linked to certain mineral systems. Even the shape of the terrain matters. Steep slopes suggest active erosion. Flat plains suggest deposition. Both affect how materials move and settle. Distance also plays a critical role. Even if a river passes through a gemstone-producing environment, the distance from the source affects what you find. If the source is far upstream, materials travel longer. They break down. They scatter. They become less concentrated. If the source is closer, the opposite happens. Materials are less worn, more concentrated, more detectable. This is why some rivers produce occasional finds, while others produce consistent results. In mineral exploration, the rocks that signal valuable deposits are rarely attractive. Most gemstones and many gold deposits form through geological systems that alter surrounding rock long before any crystals become visible at the surface. Because of this, experienced prospectors often focus less on searching for gemstones themselves and more on identifying the rock types that record mineral-forming processes. Certain rocks appear repeatedly in landscapes where gold or gemstones are discovered. These rocks may look rough, fractured, dark, or weathered, but they provide evidence of geological environments where mineralization occurs. When prospectors recognize these indicators, they gain information about the underground processes that may have transported metals or created crystal-forming conditions. Here are 5 rock types that frequently act as geological indicators: gossan, quartz, serpentinite, breccia, and pegmatite. Understanding why these rocks matter begins with the geological systems that form them. 1. Gossan, indicator of metal deposits in gold. Gossan forms when metal-rich ore bodies undergo weathering near the Earth's surface. Many mineral deposits contain sulfide minerals such as pyrite or chalcopyrite. When these minerals are exposed to oxygen and water, they oxidize and break down chemically. During this process, iron within the sulfides converts into iron oxides such as hematite and goethite. These minerals produce the distinctive reddish, orange, or brown coloration commonly seen in gossan zones. Because sulfide deposits frequently contain metals like copper, silver, zinc, and sometimes gold, the oxidized material above them becomes an important surface indicator. Geologists often describe gossan as the weathered cap of a mineralized system. The valuable minerals themselves may remain deeper underground, but the oxidation products form a visible layer at the surface. In many gold districts, Gaussian zones have historically guided exploration because they indicate that sulfide mineralization once existed in the rock below. Even if the gold itself is not immediately visible, the presence of iron-rich oxidation products signals that hydrothermal fluids once transported metals through that area. For this reason, rusty or heavily stained rock outcrops often attract attention during geological surveys. 2. Quartz, indicator of hydrothermal gold in gemstone systems. Quartz is one of the most abundant minerals in the Earth's crust, but its geological setting determines whether it may be associated with valuable deposits. Quartz commonly forms from hydrothermal fluids moving through fractures in rock. These fluids originate deep underground, where water becomes heated and enriched with dissolved minerals. As the fluid rises through cracks in the crust, pressure and temperature conditions change. When cooling occurs, dissolved silica crystallizes to form quartz. This process produces quartz veins that appear as white or pale bands cutting across darker host rock. In many hydrothermal systems, the same fluids that deposit quartz also transport metals such as gold. For this reason, quartz veins are frequently associated with gold-bearing mineralization in many parts of the world. In addition to gold, hydrothermal environments may also create conditions suitable for certain gemstones. Minerals such as tourmaline and occasionally topaz can crystallize in association with quartz-rich fluids. It is important to note that most quartz does not contain gold or gemstones. However, quartz veins provide evidence that hydrothermal fluid circulation occurred in the area. That circulation is the key process responsible for transporting and depositing many mineral resources. 3. Serpentinite, indicator of ultramafic mineral systems and jade serpentinite forms. When ultramafic rocks undergo a chemical reaction with water deep within the Earth's crust. The original rocks, typically rich in minerals like olivine and pyroxene, react with water during tectonic processes. This reaction transforms the original minerals into serpentine group minerals, producing serpentinite. The rock usually appears dark green to black and often displays a waxy or smooth surface texture. Serpentinite frequently forms along tectonic boundaries, where pieces of the Earth's mantle have been pushed upward into the crust. Although serpentinite itself does not contain gold, it can occur within geological belts associated with several valuable minerals. These include chromium deposits, nickel sulfides, and certain gemstone varieties. One of the most well-known gemstones linked to serpentinite environments is jade. Specifically, nephrite jade often forms within metamorphic systems associated with serpentinite bodies. In regions such as parts of Canada, New Zealand, and Asia, nephrite jade deposits commonly occur near serpentinite formations, where hydrothermal alteration and pressure conditions allow jade to crystallize. Because serpentinite indicates deep mantle-derived rock systems and tectonic activity, its presence often marks geological zones where unusual minerals may occur. 4. Breccia, indicator of mineralized fluid pathways. Breccia is a rock composed of angular fragments that have been broken apart and later cemented together by mineral material. The fragments can originate from many rock types, but the defining feature is their angular shape and the mineral cement filling the spaces between them. Breccia commonly forms during intense geological events such as fault movement, volcanic explosions, or hydrothermal fluid pressure fracturing rock. In hydrothermal systems, Mineral-rich fluids may fracture the surrounding rock as they move upward. The broken fragments remain in place while minerals carried by the fluid crystallize in the gaps between them. This process can produce hydrothermal breccia zones. These zones are important in mineral exploration because the fractured rock creates pathways and spaces where mineralization can accumulate. Gold, silver, copper, and other metals may become concentrated within the mineral cement of breccia formations. Certain gemstone minerals may also appear in brecciated systems where mineral-rich fluids deposit crystals within open spaces. Because breccia indicates that strong fluid movement once occurred through the rock, geologists often study these formations carefully when evaluating potential mineral deposits. 5. Pegmatite, indicator of large gemstone crystals. Pegmatite forms during the final stage of magma crystallization beneath the Earth's surface. As molten rock cools, common minerals such as feldspar and quartz crystallize first. The remaining liquid becomes enriched with water, gases, and rare chemical elements. These components reduce the viscosity of the melt and allow atoms to move more freely during crystallization. As a result, crystals can grow to unusually large sizes. The rock that forms from this late-stage magma is pegmatite. Pegmatites are well known for producing some of the largest mineral crystals found in nature. They often contain minerals such as quartz, feldspar, and mica, but they can also host gemstone varieties. Common gemstones associated with pegmatite include tourmaline, beryl, aquamarine, topaz, and sometimes garnet. Because pegmatite bodies often cut through older rock formations as narrow dikes or veins, they can appear as light-colored bands exposed along hillsides or cliffs. When erosion breaks down pegmatite formations, the crystals they contain may be released into nearby soils or river sediments. For this reason, prospectors sometimes find pegmatite-derived gemstones in streams located downstream from exposed pegmatite bodies. These 5 rocks demonstrate an important principle in geology. Valuable minerals rarely occur randomly. Instead, they form within specific geological systems that leave recognizable evidence in the surrounding rock. Gaussian indicates oxidized sulfide deposits that may contain metals such as gold. Quartz veins reveal hydrothermal fluid systems capable of transporting gold and certain gemstone minerals. Serpentinite marks ultramafic geological environments associated with jade and other unusual mineral deposits. Breccia records zones where intense fracturing allowed mineral-rich fluids to circulate and deposit metals. Pegmatite forms from late-stage magma and is one of the most important sources of large gemstone crystals. When prospectors observe these rocks in the field, they are not simply examining isolated stones. They are reading the geological history of the landscape and identifying the processes that shaped it. Understanding those processes allows geologists and collectors to evaluate whether the conditions necessary for gemstone or gold formation may have existed in the area. The rocks themselves may appear ordinary, weathered, or even unattractive, but the geological information they contain often provides the first indication that valuable minerals could be present nearby.